Good afternoon. My name is Michael Varner, and I wanted to say thank you to all of you for joining our ITS Carolinas Lunch and Learn session. Today, we will discuss ITS America's Digital Infrastructure Strategy report and how the findings can be applied to North and South Carolina. Just a couple of housekeeping things for this group to remember. One, we are recording this session, so we will make it available to our members at a later date. And two, we will be engaging with the members that are joining this call after the presentation. So with that said, please join me in welcoming Bobby McCurdy to our Lunch and Learn session. Bobby is the Senior Director in Policy and Advocacy at ITS America, where he focuses on policy development, legislative and regulatory strategy, and external advocacy on ITS America's members' priorities. Particular, the implementation of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, vehicle to everything communication, artificial intelligence, and digital infrastructure. With that, Bobby, pleased to have you on our call today. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thrilled to be here. I really appreciate the invitation and bring greetings from ITS America's headquarters here in Washington, D.C. on behalf of my president and CEO, Laura Chase. She wishes that she could be with us here today, but she has delegated me to come spread the word about the work that we're doing around digital infrastructure, the report that we put out last year on digital infrastructure and sort of how this can be utilized within the Carolinas. And let me just start by saying this, that we at ITS America are tremendously proud of our state chapters. And for personally, as somebody who spends a lot of time talking to legislators and regulators on the shared transportation priorities that we all have, which is a safer, greener, and smarter transportation system for all. So many of the things that work on a federal level have started at the state level. You know that, I know that, and that's why we know it's so important to continue to support and engage with our state chapters who are doing the hard work at the local and state level. So I am, again, thrilled to be here today, really glad to talk to you about some of the work that we're doing on this space. And I think it's a really good time for us to be having this conversation because we are on the precipice of a lot of interesting and exciting developments within the ITS community. We have a tremendous amount of momentum around vehicle-to-everything communications and transportation connectivity generally. We have FHWA taking a strong position and a lead on digital infrastructure deployment and really setting the tone for what a federal landscape for this will look like. We have movement across the board on our priorities on transportation artificial intelligence. Just a few months back, my boss, Laura Chase, was a guest of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee for a artificial intelligence roundtable on specifically on transportation use cases. So we are seeing tremendous opportunity. And I think it's on all of us to go ahead and deliver on that opportunity. Just like we see in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act or the bipartisan infrastructure law, whichever you prefer to call it. Transportation technology is eligible throughout that bill. Huge historic investment. But investing in transportation technology is a choice. And digital infrastructure is part of that. And I look forward to having a robust conversation today about some of the ways that we are looking at digital infrastructure deployment, some of the ways that ITS America recommends that our partners approach the deployment of these technologies, some conversation about how we even define this subject and what are some key characteristics of a successful deployment, which I think could definitely be applied here in the Carolinas. So without further ado, I believe I will be sharing my slide here. If you'll give me just a second. Excellent. I think we are good to go on this. So there we go. Excellent. So as I mentioned, our transportation system is evolving. It is no longer just concrete, asphalt, and steel. Today, our transportation system includes sensors, software, data, and algorithms. It includes numerous technologies allowing automation, connected vehicles, mobility on demand, and a more sustainable and resilient system. In reality, technology and data already impact much of the way we travel, but we've only begun to tap into the potential of this digital infrastructure system. In this new era of infrastructure, we will link the physical transportation system with a digital layer, allowing us to gather, transmit, store, analyze, communicate, and share information in real time, and to use that information to increase safety, reduce congestion, reduce emissions, and enhance mobility for every transportation user. And for us, that's really our North Star. We don't advocate for deploying technology for technology's sake. We advocate for developing and deploying technology to provide real outcomes for real people, making it more likely that you and your family will get home on time, that you'll be able to avoid transportation challenges on your roads. You'll be able to get to soccer practice safe and on time, and access to services like healthcare, and to do so in a way that is increasingly sustainable. So, ITS America recently published a digital infrastructure strategy report that is available on our website in our advocacy materials section of our website, which includes insights gleaned from numerous forums, workshops, and meetings of ITS America's Digital Infrastructure Working Group. And we appreciate the hundreds of industry stakeholders, public and private, that participated throughout that process. Our digital infrastructure strategy report identifies 4 key areas that are crucial to advancing digital infrastructure. One, it begins a discussion on what a definition for digital infrastructure could include, a discussion which we have continued through ITS America's policy working groups and committees at the national level. Second, it evaluates digital infrastructure through the lens of use cases, another project which we've tried to expand on since the release of this report. Third, it discusses the need for broad stakeholder participation and collaboration. And fourth, it identifies next steps to begin to implement the strategy. I'm going to go ahead and address each of these on a high level. So first, we have to, in order to have a true conversation about digital infrastructure, we have to make sure that we're able to define it. And I will say that our definition of digital infrastructure has evolved even before we made this report. The definition that we have in the report, we've amended further based on feedback from a number of our stakeholder partners. But there are a couple areas that we know that we want to be talking about when we are discussing digital infrastructure, and that is technology and innovation, such as connectivity, dynamic transportation systems, and emerging technologies, standards and reference architecture, which doesn't necessarily have to be included within the definition itself, but is something that we have to be considering as we are discussing this general terminology. Stakeholders, including the typical transportation stakeholders, but also public-private partnerships and user-centric solutions. And then finally, priorities and goals, including safety, sustainability, mobility, equity, and future-proofing. So those are 4 of the concepts that we think are critical to the concept of digital infrastructure. However, we have the legislative language that we're providing right now, based on our IIJA policy working group at ITS America, has come up with this definition, which I'm just going to go ahead and read to you. I promise I'm going to stop trying to read things off the slides, except for this and one other slide. But I will say it's digital infrastructure comprises the public and private technology assets that create, exchange, or use data to provide information and insights to advance transportation safety, resiliency, access and opportunity, and the efficient movement of goods and freight across users, companies, devices, digital assets, and public agencies. Digital infrastructure includes the data, communication systems, servers, routers, hardware, sensors, software applications, and computing to layer actionable insights across the transportation systems. Now, we have a shorter definition as well, but I think it's more useful for the sake of this conversation, and since I've been given the amount of time to discuss this, to show what we're suggesting be put in the larger transportation code. And I'll get into sort of how we're planning to do that later in the presentation. But you can see here that we're talking about what digital infrastructure is, what we're trying to do with it, and who we're doing it with. Would I say that this definition gets really into standards and reference architecture? Not necessarily, but I still think it's a strong definition for bringing to the hill to talk about how we're going to be approaching this within surface transportation reauthorization and IIJA reauthorization. So use cases and a reference architecture. So we've talked about the definition. Now let's talk about how we are doing these things and what the report how the report approaches these use cases. In April 2023, we convened a workshop to evaluate 10 critical digital infrastructure use cases to meet safety, equity, economic strength, and climate objectives. These use cases represent an initial blueprint for demonstrating digital infrastructure capabilities, but of course are not an exhaustive list of potential use cases. These could be a starting point from which USDOT can focus resource allocation, define and establish achievable milestones, and measure the potential and progress of digital infrastructure while achieving meaningful results for the traveling public. We provide an in-depth overview of two use cases, connected vehicle data and traffic signal integration, which we use to identify obstacles to success and outline the necessary steps to mitigate them. Finally, this section also addresses the need for a digital reference architecture and a shared data layer. I would note that there are a number of systems that will be included within the digital infrastructure system, and digital infrastructure doesn't have to replace the many other standards that have been developed throughout the transportation system. Rather, digital infrastructure will truly be a system of systems, or at least we hope it will, and may require an architecture of architectures. The key will be providing a functional architecture that allows for innovation, but also prioritizes interoperability. The shared data layer must provide trustable data for stakeholders to use and build from it, particularly on the part of OEMs. So I will just say, as a note before we move on from this use case discussion, there is a lot of interest in Washington on what we can do with use cases around these subjects. We have a number of the digital infrastructure use cases that we've called out here, including, as I mentioned, the two that we went in depth on. But ITS America has been releasing numerous use cases further than this through our use case database and use case library, which we just updated last week with another dozen use cases, which run the gamut of digital infrastructure, connectivity, artificial intelligence, you name it. That again is available on our website, and we just updated it about 8 days ago. So it's definitely hot off the press and definitely talking about some things that would probably be interesting to what you're doing in the Carolinas. All right, stakeholder collaboration. One of the key steps that we've identified towards alignment on digital infrastructure will be to correctly identify the complex stakeholder map and ensure we are bringing each of these communities into the conversation. We've made an attempt to outline a stakeholder map here, which you can see involves numerous stakeholders with varying needs and responsibilities. And this includes, as you can see, USDOT, which has a variety of responsibilities on this effort. It also includes state and local public entities, enabling organizations, digital infrastructure user interfaces, and the end users themselves. The key point here is that I know this is complex, and we know that it will be needed to be expanded and improved, but each of these stakeholders has a part to play in the development and implementation of digital infrastructure. Yeah, I'm not going to try to go through all of this, but I would just say that this is, again, our initial attempt at mapping who we think are going to be important stakeholders within this space. And fourth and finally, the 11 keys to implementation of digital infrastructure. And I think this is important to the work that you're doing. And so I'm going to go through each of these just to make sure that we're discussing them, because I think that in terms of the second part of the title of this presentation, how it's relevant to North and South Carolina, these are important. It's setting a common vision of what we're going to be able to achieve through digital infrastructure, establishing a roadmap with defined milestones, defining digital infrastructure. Again, that's an ongoing process, but we've been able to help make that a little easier. Prioritize relevant industry use cases, allocating funding for technology. I'm going to talk about how we're working on that on the federal level coming up soon. Developing a facilitative policy and regulatory framework. Again, that's something we're working on here at ITS America. Making a difference through real impacts, emphasizing citizen-centric changes, leveraging industry associations to foster collaboration, fostering partnerships and collaboration with industry stakeholders, and regularly reviewing and adapting the digital infrastructure to meet technological innovation. I know that these are a lot of steps, but each one will enhance our ability to be able to deliver on the promises of digital infrastructure. Now, as we've been working on those tasks, there are a few themes that have emerged that I think are relevant to the deployment of all technology and innovation. Development of technology and innovation will not happen on its own, as it requires a environment that can support it. And here are 5 things that we've been in our conversations with USDOT and our partners seeing that are really helpful on the ground level for making sure that these things are going to be able to succeed. Leadership includes leadership at all levels, from the federal government down to the local policymaker. Leadership is required to make space to try new things. The regulatory environment, we need to ensure a regulatory environment that allows for experimentation and innovation while holding stakeholders to standards around safety, equity, and mobility. Public engagement. We need to do a better job of listening to communities and their challenges and matching those with technologies and innovation to provide solutions. We need to explain the benefits and deliver outcomes while developing trust that we have taken a sound and safe approach to privacy, security, and automation. In short, we need to stop talking about public acceptance and begin focusing on public engagement. Fourth, technology and innovation often change a system's workforce needs. We need to do a better job of upskilling our existing workforce to meet the needs of the future digital system, and we at ITS America are working with labor to identify opportunities to ensure this shift supports our existing workers. And I would note that that's not just talking points that we are considering trying to help the workforce. My president and CEO Laura Chase has a great relationship with her counterpart at the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO, and this is something that I've seen them be able to do significant work on, coming together and identifying where we can use technology to improve the situation for workers, and not have this be a zero-sum game. So I think that is something that we are strongly working towards, and workforce is always going to be something that we're prioritizing. And finally, to deploy and scale technology, we need to prioritize investment across funding streams, not just limited to technology-focused discretionary grant programs. Funding for digital infrastructure should be a priority for a number of grant programs under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, including Safe Streets and Roads for All, RAISE, and other federal grant programs beyond the ones that are technology-focused at their core, which would be SMART and ATTAIN specifically, but a couple others. These are all important discretionary grant programs that digital infrastructure should be eligible under, and that we're doing great things with. But we need dedicated, reliable funding for transportation technology to be able to scale these technologies across the country. And we'll sort of talk about that and how we're looking to reevaluate the funding structure a little later in the presentation. But I guess the next question would be, what is next? How do we accomplish these priorities? The first thing we need is that we call on USDOT to begin setting a common vision and establishing a roadmap with defined milestone. We need a vision from USDOT that defines digital infrastructure, identifies USDOT and industry goals and priorities around digital infrastructure, and provides a framework for development to a common end result, while allowing for innovation and improvement. We also need a roadmap to guide federal, state, local research and private sector development of a digital infrastructure system with ambitious but achievable milestones that will allow us to assess implementation and measure progress. Without these milestones, it'll be too easy to talk about the future without ever making progress towards achieving it. So, what is ITS America's role? We will continue to work with the industry to improve our own proposal, refine some of its key points and recommended actions, and to urge USDOT and other stakeholders to make real progress towards implementation. We are also working to implement a number of policy changes within the United States that we believe will be particularly relevant to digital infrastructure deployment efforts. If you'll allow me, I'll take a moment to outline how we are approaching our policy advocacy on this effort generally. So, as I mentioned, within the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, there is significant opportunity for transportation technology, but we don't have the strong, reliable, certain investment that we know we need and funding for a scaled transportation deployment. ITS America has an opportunity to propose policy which includes digital infrastructure in certain surface transportation formula and discretionary funding programs, USDOT initiatives and agencies, and in other policy areas. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act contains many new opportunities to deploy. We want to continue key funding programs, improve the program eligibility for digital infrastructure deployments, and strengthen the research and development of digital technologies, as well as advance awareness of digital infrastructure's transformative potential within our nation's transportation system. As part of these efforts, ITS America seeks to advocate for a number of policy principles, three of which I think are particularly relevant for our conversation today: digital infrastructure reauthorization, transportation technology funding, and enhancing the procurement process. In terms of digital infrastructure reauthorization, a lot of what we are looking to do involves specific tweaks to Titles 23 and 49 in the U.S. Code. Some of those tweaks could include efforts to formally establish a definition for digital infrastructure in the context of transportation programs, leaning on the definition discussion that we had within our IIJ policy working group. Additionally, we are looking to support USDOT's efforts to develop a digital infrastructure strategy or roadmap, as I mentioned, for widespread adoption across the country, which could include a newly created advisory committee to oversee digital infrastructure. Finally, ITS America will support policy which encourages support for transportation technology education efforts throughout the United States and throughout USDOT. Finally, strengthening workforce development and long-term planning at the non-federal level for digital infrastructure, we believe, is crucial to successful deployment. Each of these represents opportunities to incorporate digital infrastructure throughout federal infrastructure policy through the reauthorization process. ITS America also intends to provide policy related to transportation funding. I wouldn't say that necessarily we have this one all figured out, but we have the framework. So I'd like to suggest that the what I'm discussing here is more a discussion of points that we know that we need when we're looking at transportation technology funding. And a lot of that has to do with ensuring that transportation technology is being supplied with sufficient formula funding. The discretionary funding, as I mentioned, is great, but we need much more in terms of formula funding. And we've identified a couple of ways that we can do that, that we're talking about this within our IIJ policy working group. But we need to make sure that if you look at the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, transportation technology funding represents about 0.1% of the funding. The funding dedicated to transportation technology is about 0.1% relative to the funding that's available for physical infrastructure. We're not saying that we need to plus that up dramatically, but we need, if you were able to have 1 or 2% for transportation technology, for digital infrastructure, transportation connectivity, all of these aspects, we would be able to easily have a scaled deployment of technologies to accomplish our shared transportation priorities. And as part of that some of the discussion of that's going to have to be around procurement enhancement as well, and whether or not we can use funding for things like operations and maintenance, which I know is a struggle for a lot of our state and local partners when they're trying to look at utilizing a software program that they know they can use to help leverage and better utilize their physical infrastructure, help them make strategic decisions around what they're going to deploy, and just a variety of things that we've shown that you can accomplish through software. They're hitting a wall when they get to procurement because they don't have the people in their departments that know how to procure software relative to procuring the things they need to do to build roads and to build highways. And they don't know if they are going to be able to spend the federal money that they have, if they have the flexibility to use that on long-term operation and maintenance purposes. So we are working with our federal partners to try to have a better solution around both of those issues. Other priorities that I think are important for this discussion is data privacy. That's something that we are working on policy principles on right now, but ITS America supports a federal privacy framework, which will be an all of the above industry-wide, but really all industry data privacy protections at a federal level, and we're working with our congressional partners to continue to encourage that. Cybersecurity, you might have seen that recently there's been a lot of attention on things like connected vehicles from the Department of Commerce related to concerns from some of the Department of Commerce around the ability of China and other foreign hostile countries to influence vehicles or access vehicles through cybersecurity flaws. And this is something that we've been working with our partners significantly on, and we have a cybersecurity working group and a community of practice which is doing significant work on this topic. And we've definitely been able to identify a number of the technologies that we're working on that have much lower risk relative to this discussion, such as vehicle to everything communications, which are more localized and don't really have the opportunity to be able to transmit data back to any other foreign country. We're continuing to try to sort of parse this through with our federal partners, but we're going to be developing more policy principles on this. And then finally, artificial intelligence, which I can get into later if we have more time. I'm happy to discuss that. We have a huge amount of work that's been going on that. We just came out with a similar report, just like the one we did here on digital infrastructure. We just came out with one on artificial intelligence at the end of last year, and came out with artificial intelligence principles about a month ago and got those approved by our board. So that is hugely relevant, but that is also sort of a rabbit hole. I will say that a lot of the work that we're doing on this subject are coming from our committees. These are public and private uh, members of ITS America that come together to solve the tough problems and thought leadership around digital infrastructure, AI, and policy working in digital infrastructure policy. These are just some of the groups that we have. My colleague Tina Williams is doing a great job of running a lot of really interesting conversations in each of these that are coming up with robust deliverables. Like, for example, the digital infrastructure policy working group is coming out with all of our policy on these subjects. And the AI group just came out with an AI decoded document, which I think is super interesting. In case you have a chance to look on our website to take a look at that, if you are working on AI and want to have see our document, which tries to answer some of the frequently asked questions around that, I think it's super helpful. But we're really proud of the work that's coming out of our committees because it really is a unique opportunity for the public and private sector to come together at a national level to talk about how we can be accomplishing what we know we can do with a scaled transportation deployment. And I will just say these are a couple of other reports and strategies that we've been I sort of mentioned a couple of these, but that have come out of ITS America recently. One of which is the AI impact of AI on transportation and mobility, which I just mentioned. That document is really the same caliber as our digital infrastructure strategy report available on our website. Addressing the patchwork, a state-by-state analysis for autonomous trucking in the United States. This goes state by state to look at the rules of the road for automated trucks and autonomous trucking based on a variety of factors we did this with AUVSI and KNL Gates, but I think it's a helpful sort of guidebook if you're interested in this space to look at what it's like in each of the different states and how we can come together for a national framework for policy around this subject. And then finally, I would say that the ITS America had come out with a national V2X deployment plan, which argued the use cases and the rationale for a nationwide scale deployment of vehicle to everything communications. We're very proud of this document because I think it really helped spur a lot of the work that USDOT has been doing on this. And now we know that, or at least it helped guide their national V2X deployment plan that they're going to be coming out with in a couple of weeks' time now. Huge moment for the V2X space. So certainly happy to talk about that if anybody is interested. And then finally, I would say that, as I mentioned earlier, we have a use case library that we just updated last week, and you can see here there's a number of examples: AV shuttles, digital alerting, connected vehicle technology, and school buses. There's AI. There's a number of use cases. I think we have something like 36 now in this library. It's publicly available. We bring it to the Hill all the time. Please go ahead and take a look at that or contribute to it. If you have a use case that you're interested in sharing with us, we'd love to talk with you about it. What we want to include in this use case library is basically anything that has a tangible outcome and a tangible benefit that we can report, because we have a number of people that are just starting projects and we think those are great. We want to support them. We're on a number of them. But in terms of reporting to our federal partners, the successes that we're seeing in this space, we're going to be able to get a lot more traction when you have use cases that have examples with reportable benefits that we can sort of articulate and make the case as to why investment in these is a useful and beneficial cause. And there's a number of those use cases which are artificial intelligence based. And I just want to go into a basically just at a high level that we want to use artificial intelligence to be able to solve specific problems, to solve transportation use cases and create better transportation outcomes. There isn't a push to use artificial intelligence or digital infrastructure or transportation connectivity for the sake of deploying technology in and of itself. We truly believe that these technologies are going to be capable of moving the needle towards our shared transportation goals. And I've said that a lot, but I think it's for me and for ITS America, the shared transportation goals and our North Star starts at transportation safety. For too long in our country, we've been approaching transportation safety the same way. We've been utilizing the status quo, and we have not been able to meaningfully make a difference towards the 40,000 deaths that we see on American roads on an annual basis. It's an American tragedy. We wouldn't allow it in any other industry, and we know that we need to move from being a society that is reactive to transportation fatalities and crashes, and move to being proactive. And that's how we know that we can see where danger spots are, where near misses have been taking place, where there are challenges in intersections on our highways, on our roads, whether it's between other vehicles, between vehicles and pedestrians, vehicles and cyclists. We can solve those problems before a crash has to take place, through technologies like digital infrastructure, through technologies like artificial intelligence. We think that the technology to do that, we know the technology to do that is available today, and we want to give it just I want to give a couple examples because I do think that artificial intelligence really is baked into a lot of the things we're trying to do around digital infrastructure. So I just think it's relevant just for a quick couple of points before I'll close for questions. And that's that, for example, in the RTC Southern Nevada, and in Texas, there was the AI platform by Recor has detected incidents and crashes at an average of 13 minutes faster than traditional 911 calls, which reduces in a decrease in emergency response times and a reduction in cost. This is something we can do with artificial intelligence and digital infrastructure. In intersection safety, more than 50% of the combined total fatal and injury crashes occur at or near intersections. AI can be used for advanced intersection analytics and vulnerable road user safety to be proactive rather than the current method of being reactive. Multiple data sets can be used to train an AI model on behavior at an intersection and predict future unsafe conditions so engineers can proactively address them. Predictive maintenance for infrastructure and vehicles. Using machine learning and other AI tools, automakers and manufacturers can now identify and predict vehicle and fleet maintenance to a more precise degree, improving not only vehicle performance, but also maintenance operations and costs. New York City's MTA is using AI technology to predict bus breakdowns and maintenance needs, helping the agency plan for future needs and operate efficiently for customers. MTA found a 75% increase in maintenance productivity and material costs lowered by 24% using AI. So this isn't just some abstract concept. And finally, traffic flow optimization, something that I think that is easily visualized as to what we can do with these technologies. Analyzing data from traffic patterns, congestion points, and other factors affecting traffic flow allows proactive monitoring of traffic signal performance and on-demand signal optimization throughout a network. Flow Labs, for example, one of ITS America's members, is working with the city of Seattle for traffic network optimization. They're also doing traffic signal retiming at a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost that it takes to do that manually. So we're just seeing a tremendous explosion in efficiency, productivity, return on investment, but most importantly, an improvement in safety outcomes, which again is our North Star and what we know is something we can do with a shared deployment of these technologies. The last thing, just because I mentioned them, and I apologize that I had to really scrunch this onto the page here, but since this came out last month, I wanted to just flag for the group the artificial intelligence principles that we had come out with around three buckets: trust and transparency, human-centric use, and outcomes-based deployment. There's a lot of information here, and our principles are available online. But under trust and transparency, that can involve transparent and explainable applications, data privacy, security, and accountability. for human-centric use, equitable and representative data inputs, workforce considerations, and tangible benefits. And finally, for outcomes-based deployment, safety, equity, and resiliency and sustainability. For those outcomes, those are the things that we are trying to accomplish with artificial intelligence. And we know we can around each of those things. And that has to do with the information we're putting into it, the information we're getting out of it, and how we're able to utilize our digital infrastructure ecosystem powered by artificial intelligence and vehicle connectivity to be able to accomplish a dramatic improvement to our safety outcomes on American roads. And so with that, I know that we were trying to leave sufficient time for questioning. Specifically, I think it was 20 minutes, so we might be able to hit that one on the dot. But I'd just like to say to Michael, thank you again for having me. Really glad to be able to talk about the high level of any of the discussions that we're having within ITS America for digital infrastructure, and certainly happy at this point to dive into the more deeper details of anything that we talked about in case anybody has any questions.
Hey, Bobby, first, thank you for the presentation and a lot of good, helpful information here. We will open it up to questions, and I guess I'll kick us off. One of the things that you mentioned with respect to keys of innovation was public engagement. From your perspective, how at a more local level can ITS Carolina, support that public engagement and be an asset to, future discussions?
I think that's a great question, Michael. I think that it comes down to how technology deployments are being approached, and I think a good example for this is we do a lot of work with drones essentially, and there's can be some concerns when a basically a drone hub is being set up near somebody's backyard. They have a lot of questions about it. They don't want a technology being put into their communities without having a discussion as to what exactly the use cases are that these new technologies are trying to accomplish. And so in having those discussions with community members before the implementation of a significantly new technology is always something that's going to be helpful. And we've done a lot of work with that within the work, the UAS work that ITS America has been working on within our Emerging Technology Committee to be able to sort of dive deeper into what public engagement looks like on that for a successful deployment of those technologies. That's the same thing for digital infrastructure, for artificial intelligence, for transportation connectivity. I think it's something that could be made very, very clear to communities when there are transportation challenges and crashes that are taking place in key intersections. You can tell the story as to what the benefits are going to be without trying to just sell them on the technology. You sell them on the benefits, and you talk about where this is being deployed in other parts of the country and what successes they've been able to see from that. And I think that it's just in terms of meeting the community where they are and making it clear that you're not trying to deploy technology for technology's sake, that this is a clear outcomes-based deployment, as is everything that you're trying to do within your respective departments of transportation.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'll open up to the floor. Any questions for Bobby?
While people are thinking, I'll just say this: we are having some really fascinating conversations about all these topics within ITS America's policy committees and working groups. And if you are a member of ITS America and you are not involved in any of those, or if you're interested in becoming a member, please shoot me an email. I'd love to talk to you because particularly I'm really interested in this policy working group that we're doing, the IIJA policy. We're going to be coming out with a plan at the end of this year to get ready for 2025 and 2026 that has one of the most, I think, ambitious proposals for transportation funding that we've seen in this industry for a long time, and we're going to be lining people up to support us with that. So this is the time to get in and help influence where we are going with that discussion, and then to come and help us secure this. Because if we can get sizable, significant, reliable funding for transportation technologies to solve the problems that we talked about here as a group, that's going to radically improve our transportation outcomes. We're sure of that. So we really appreciate your help with sort of the crafting, the messaging, the strategy, the how we're going to accomplish getting this historic investment in the ITS community.
Bobby, this is Meredith McDermott. I'm currently the president of ITS Carolinas, and recently retired from the DOT, and now I'm with Atkins Realis. So I got a little bit of everything in there. But as I think about our DOT and our municipal partners, when I was with the DOT, there was a lot of I'll just say fits and starts, some pilots that we would do and see if it were DSRC, for instance. And so my question, it leads me to ask you, what do you believe is going to be the biggest challenge for the DOTs and the municipalities as they move towards this? You know, the industry always moves faster than government, if you will. And I know specifically a couple of people on this call want to be in the forefront, but they may not be able to be as agile or as nimble as the industry itself. So what advice would you give to them, and what challenges do you think they will face moving forward?
Well, that's a great question, Meredith, and again, thank you for your leadership of ITS Carolinas. We're thrilled to be able to be working with you on this. I think in terms of the challenges, the challenges that I see are the things that we're trying to fix and that we're spending the most of our bandwidth on trying to solve, and that is the availability of secure transportation funding to be able to know that you're going to be able to do this. If you start with a software, that you're going to be able to have the money and be able to continue to pay for it a couple of years down the line when you don't have the sort of confidence in the same way that you can do, that you know how to build a road, you know how to build a highway, a bike lane. Like there's a different process to that. So we're working on trying to help improve that. There's also, when you bring up the subject of DSRC, I think DSRC is an excellent use case about and about what the presence of a strong, supportive regulatory environment and regulatory confidence can do, and what a lack of it can cause. And that DSRC was the victim of significant regulatory uncertainty for many years related to whether or not the FCC was going to take away the spectrum that is fundamental to the use of the dedicated short range radio communications, whether whether Congress was going to continue to be able to support this, whether USDOT was going to be able to continue to advocate for these technologies. What I'm seeing now is that our federal partners are all coalescing around one technology with one solution, and a lot of the barriers around regulatory certainty are falling away because you're seeing the FCC just about to, probably later this month, at least within 2 months, come out with the final rules for spectrum for V2X communications. That's going to be huge for regulatory certainty. For the USDOT to come out with their final plan for a national V2X deployment plan, that should give the people, the public members of your state chapter, confidence that there is regulatory support from USDOT for the deployment of these technologies. The FCC is not going to continue to be getting in the way of this, and industry is coming in with the funds and with the initiative to be able to support these deployments as well from their perspective. So I'm hopeful that, in my perspective, the biggest challenges are transportation funding, which we're working to solve, and regulatory certainty, which I think is a lot better for a lot of these things right now, and will particularly be if USDOT continues to act on things like digital infrastructure, on artificial intelligence. And the last thing I'll say, relative to your point, is that you're right, that a lot of times we are seeing fits and starts when it comes to pilots, but we don't see continued development from those pilots. And that's why we want to have a national plan for digital infrastructure that talks about how these things are going to be accomplished at a scaled level, that pilots aren't enough. And oftentimes pilots are what you're getting from small discretionary grant programs that come in, they show what can be done, and they expect everybody else is going to be able to sort of see that and take up the mantle, which is a helpful exercise if you have the resources to do it. But we want to make sure that there is the support from our federal partners to be able to make that investment now, which is going to pay dividends in terms of return on investment from transportation efficiency and physical asset utilization, and of course, return on investment from transportation safety purposes. So I think it all comes down to what we're trying to accomplish here at a federal level to enable the state and local departments of transportation to really fully address and utilize these transportation opportunities.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Bobby?
Well, Michael, I appreciate it. Very grateful to be able to talk with this group here today. As I mentioned, my inbox is open. Please feel free to shoot me an email if you want to talk about anything that we discussed here today, or if you want to get more involved in the work that we're doing. That applies to everybody here on this call. We certainly are interested in talking with you, and I just am looking forward to continuing to support the work of ITS Carolinas and see how we can further engage more in the future.
Bobby, thank you for that, and really appreciate your time and energy today. With that, I'd like to invite Meredith McDermott, our ITS Carolinas president, to share a closing remark with this group.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks for putting this together. And Bobby, we appreciate you spending time with us today and sharing information on this very important plethora of topics related to ITS infrastructure. So thank you for being here. And thank you for those who called in today. I know this is a difficult topic, but a very important one. And so we wanted to bring that to you through our Lunch and Learns. So thank you for participating and being a part of the solution. I think that's the most important thing. Just want to remind everyone that we're going to have our next ITS Carolinas annual meeting in Wilmington next year, March 11th and 12th. So pencil that in on your calendars, and you'll be seeing more information as we get closer to that date. Again, thanks, Michael, for putting this together.
Thank you, and I hope everyone has a great day. Take care.
Thank you.